Hello viewers, welcome back to our series of lectures on the topic amino acids, peptides, proteins and nucleic acids. In the previous session we talked about amino acids in terms of their structure, representation and classification, and today we will take up the acid base properties and stereochemistry of amino acids. Now, to make a beginning about the acid base properties, let us look at some data on the solubility and melting points of some simple compounds. I have picked up certain molecules which are of comparable molar mass here. The choice has been lactic acid, which basically is a carboxylic acid here, alanine, which is an amino acid, and 3-amino 2-butanol, which basically is an amine. Now, if we look at here, we find that this alanine, that is alpha amino acid here, has properties which are very different from those of the two compounds which I have chosen here. Especially if I look at the solubility in alcohol, we find that alanine happens to be insoluble, whereas the other two compounds are highly soluble in alcohol. And as regards the melting point, we find the melting point of alanine is exceptionally high, about 297 degrees centigrade, as compared to about 4 and 9 of the other two molecules. Why so? What makes amino acids so different? How do I rationalize this kind of a data? And that rationalization can be done by assigning a zwitterionic structure to the amino acids. Let us say what does it mean to us? Basically, we can say that all amino acids have got zwitterionic structure. What is a zwitterion? Let us have a look at it. Typically, an amino acid is shown as follows, because that means you have got a carboxylic acid group there, there is an amino group and there is a side chain, and this is my CH alpha here. Now, in this case, there are two functionalities here. One is an acidic functional group, one is a basic functional group. And what can happen is there can be a proton transfer from the carboxylic group to amino group here, and what we have is a structure of this kind. And typically, most of the amino acids will exist at zwitterion, because that is the form which is most commonly observed in them, and that is the one which is responsible for the property we just talked about. Okay, so that is a kind of statement we want to make about the nature of amino acids, that they happen to be zwitterionic. Now, let us take up the acid base properties of alpha amino acids. The question is, why do we talk so much about acid base properties? Because the alpha amino acids are very special, because they have got two different kind of functionalities, an acidic functional group and a basic functional group in the part of the same molecule. And this fact actually leads to amino acid being polyprotic acids. Let us understand the meaning of this. What it means is that if you look at amino acid actually ionizes in a number of steps there, because I am sure that we all know about what is a polyprotic acid. A polyprotic acid is the one which ionizes in different stages there. So, the example I am going to take with you is basically represent it to be a diprotic acid. Let us see what does it mean. What does it mean is the following: you have got an cationic form of my amino acid here, and this can ionize, that means this carboxylic group of it can get ionized to give me the following structure here, which can further ionize, that means the first ionization is of the carboxylic acid group and the second ionization pertains to ammonium group there, that is NH3 plus group there, and then what you get is species of this kind. Now, these two ionizations are characterized in terms of the two pKa values, pKa1 and pKa2. So, basically this happens to be a diprotic acid. Now, suppose I take another amino acid wherein the side chain also has got some kind of ionizable group, maybe say aspartic acid, it has got a carboxylic acid there, or if I take lysine, which has got a additional ammonium group over there. Now, suppose in that cases we will have yet another ionization come into picture, that means it will be acting as a triprotic acid. Okay. So, the bottom line here is that typically all alpha amino acids will behave at least a diprotic acid here. That is one consequence of the presence of two functionalities in the same molecule. Now, if I want to look at these kind of ionizations sequence one by one, let us have a look at it. If I look at the carboxylic acid group here, the ionization of carboxylic acid group can be shown as follows, that is, we have got an amino acid here and this is my carboxylic acid group there. This H has been highlighted here, because this is the one which is going to get ionized. When it ionizes, we find that this ionization of carboxylic acid group can be characterized by a pK value, we call it as pKa1. And as we can see from the literature, the average value of pKa1 is found to be lower than the comparable aliphatic carboxylic acids. That means, if I take the pKa1 value of amino acids that of comparable or similar sized aliphatic carboxylic acid, we find that this pKa value happens to be lower. Let us take some examples here. Say glycine. For glycine, the value of this pKa happens to be 2.34, whereas that for acetic acid it is 4.74. We find that this acidic group is more acidic as compared to a simple carboxylic acid without having a NH2 group there. Let us move further and look at ionization of alpha ammonium groups. In case of alpha amino acids, that is the way we can show it here. That means, you have got an NH3 plus here, which can get ionized to give me NH2 here. And we find that this ionization can be characterized in terms of another pK value, we call it as pKa2. Further, again looking at literature, if I want to compare this average value of pKa2 with that of comparable aliphatic ammonium ions, that means, if I take ammonium ions, there is no carboxylic acid in that, and we find that I give you some examples here. For alanine, the value happens to be 9.69, whereas that for ammonium ion of 2-aminopropane happens to be 10.6. Here again we find that the alpha NH3 group is less basic. That means, it is more acidic, means it is less basic. So, this is about the ionization of alpha carboxylic acid and alpha ammonium group. Now, let us say look at the ionization of side chain carboxylic acid. Suppose, as I mentioned earlier, suppose the amino acid happens to have a carboxylic acid group in the side chain. How do we look at that kind of ionization? Such kind of ionization will be characterized by a pK value, we call it as pKr. R basically indicates that this kind of functionality lies in the side chain. Just to qualify that, we put an R over here. Further, what you find is, again if I compare the pKr values for different amino acids, wherever the R group has a functionality of that kind with comparable aliphatic carboxylic acids, we find that the pK values, let us look at some data again. The beta carboxylic acid group of aspartic acid has a pK value of 3.86, and that of the gamma carboxylic acid group of glutamic acid is 4.07, whereas that of acetic acid happens to be 4.74. Here again we find that these groups are more acidic. That means, carboxylic acid group even in the side chain happen to be more acidic as compared to that of a common carboxylic acid without any amino group in that. Based on these three kind of ionizations I have discussed with you, we can conclude that the carboxylic acid groups of alpha amino acids happen to be more acidic, and ammonium groups are found to be less basic than the comparable molecules with a single functional group. That means, if we have a molecule which has got only one functionality, then that when compared to the amino acid we find there are differences. So, that is one kind of a conclusion we can draw on the basis of this discussion I have made with you. Let us look at one more consequence of the special nature of alpha amino acids, that is their amphoteric nature. That means, alpha amino acids are amphoteric. What it means is that they can act as an acid as well as a base. Acidic nature of alpha amino acid can be demonstrated with the help of the following expression here, that is, we have an amino acid here which can react with a base, and this base is going to abstract a proton from the NH3 part of it here, and then what you get is the following products over there. Similarly, we can demonstrate the basic nature by making this amino acid react with an acid here, that is there is hydronium ion here. So, this will pick up a proton from hydronium ion and gets protonated here. So, these two expressions very aptly demonstrate the amphoteric nature of alpha amino acids. Now, so far what we have been doing is we have been talking about the ionization of different components of amino acid. Now, if I want to look at the overall acid base behavior of an acid, alpha amino acid, what we have to do is we have to look at some kind of a titration curves for these things, and from that perspective if you look, the alpha amino acid probably can be put into two groups there. One of that happens to be the amino acids which do not have any ionizable group in the side chain, the examples being glycine, alanine, valine, leucine, etc., etc. Then the second group would be the one wherein there is a ionizable group in the side chain. Typically there could be lysine with an NH3 group there, aspartic acid, glutamic acid, both of them having a carboxylic acid group there. So there are the two broad groups whereby we can study the overall acid base behavior of alpha amino acids. Let's begin with the first group first, that is, we start with the amino acids without having any ionizable group in the side chain. As I just mentioned, the typical examples are glycine, alanine, valine, etc. So I am going to show you a schematic diagram of the titration curve of alanine with NaOH. Now, this titration curve shows us that as we go on adding more and more amount of NaOH, how does the pH of the solution changes. We find that this is the curve which tells us the variation of pH as a function of addition of more and more amount of NaOH. What does it mean? What does it mean is that in this curve, if you look closely, there are two things which are very, very prominent here. First, there are two inflection points here. Let us see what they are. The first inflection point is somewhere here at a pH of about 2.34. This is labeled as pKa1. So, basically this pertains to the ionization of carboxylic acid group. Thereafter, we have another inflection point somewhere here, that is the one which pertains to the ionization of ammonium group, that is NH3 plus. Now, these two are the ionization part of it here, and then further if you look at, we find that this whole curve can be put into three different regions there. The first region here, which basically is primarily, if we just can make a guess here, this pertains to the amino acid being in the cationic form. That means, at very low pH it is fully protonated form, and this gives you an ionized part of it here, and then this gives you the anionic part of it. We will talk about all these equilibria while from now. Now, let us look at the equilibrias involved here. The equilibrias involved, let us look at the first equilibrium here. To begin with, when the pH is say less than 2 or so, as I just mentioned, at very low pH, the amino acid alanine I have taken as example here will primarily exist as the following form. I labeled it as C, indicating it is a cationic form here, because we have COH group which is in the protonated form, and this NH3 is a cation here. So, the overall molecule is having a positive charge on that. This cationic form is there. As I go on adding more and more amount of NaOH, what happens is this carboxylic group gets titrated. As a consequence, the species changes from this cationic species to a zwitterionic form over here. That means, if I go on adding more and more amount of NaOH, the equilibrium will shift more and more towards the Z side. I mean, from C we go to Z form. That is, as I increase the pH, the molecule becomes more and more in the zwitterionic form as compared to that in the cationic form there. Now, if I further increase the pH, what happens? What happens is that as this C is getting converted to Z, when I increase the pH, even another equilibrium comes into picture, whereby this Z also gets further ionized. That means, this NH3 plus group in this zwitterionic form here gets ionized to give me the following species, which is the anionic form of amino acid there. That is, and typically at a given pH, when the pH is moderate, we find that primarily we will have this form here, and at low pH we will have primarily the cationic form, and at very high pH we will have primarily the anionic form there. That means, if I go on adding more and more amount of NaOH, we find that Z form gets converted into A form, that is anionic form, and at extremely high pH, a pH of greater than 10 or so, we find that the amino acid primarily will be in the anionic form there. So that is a kind of equilibria involved in the ionization of amino acid like alanine. If I just look closely, you will find that, as I just mentioned also, that is, we had a very low pH, it is cationic form. As I increase the pH, it becomes zwitterionic. I increase the pH, it becomes anionic. And then there are two equilibrias here, from cationic to zwitterionic and from zwitterionic to anionic form. Now, at a moderate pH, at a certain pH, what will happen is that the amino acid will be primarily in the zwitterionic form. That means, from this equilibrium point of view, cationic to zwitterionic, it is extensively on this side. From here, it has not moved this side. So, primarily it is in the zwitterionic form. That pH, when this happens, that is, when the amino acid exists primarily as a zwitterion, is called as the isoelectric point. That means, we can define isoelectric points to be the pH of an aqueous solution of an amino acid at which its molecules on an average have no net charge, which implies that they are zwitterionic, because when your molecule is zwitterionic, there is no net charge, there is equal number of positive and negative charges. So, molecule as a whole is neutral. The isoelectric point for amino acids like alanine can be computed by taking the average of two pK values. You remember the two inflection points, and for alanine this will come down to a value of about 6.015. Typically it is 6.01 or even 6 is fine, because that is a pH at which alanine primarily will be existing in the zwitterionic form. Let us move on to the second category of amino acids, wherein there is an ionizable group in the side chain. We start with the one wherein there is an ionizable carboxylic acid group in the side chain. That can be exemplified by aspartic acid, as I have been mentioning again and again. So, in case of aspartic acid, what you find is this titration curve is quite different from what we had in case of alanine. What you find is that in this case there are 3 inflection points and there are 4 regions over there. What does it mean? Let us look at them. So, the first inflection point is somewhere here, which basically is about the ionization of alpha COH group of the aspartic acid. Then there is a second inflection point, which is about the ionization of the side chain carboxylic acid, and this is the third one, which is about the ionization of NH3 plus group there. So, in this case there are 3 sets of ionization taking place over there. Basically it is going to behave as a triprotic acid. That is what I mentioned in the beginning. Further, we find that there are 4 different regions, which means that there are 4 different kinds of species possible in case of aspartic acid. Now, in order to understand the nature of species in these regions, region 1, region 2, region 3 and 4, let us look at the equilibria involved. All this in this whole process here, the equilibria can be represented as follows. Now, what we see is that when the pH is low, that is in the highly acidic range, we find the species 1 is this, which is a monocationic form of aspartic acid, wherein this is a cation here and then these 2 groups are unionized here. Now, with the increase in pH, what happens is, to begin with, this alpha carboxylic acid group starts getting ionized. As a consequence, we have an equilibrium between this monocationic species and a zwitterion here. So, we find that with increase in pH, more and more of zwitterion is formed and this gets consumed. With further increase in pH, the ionization of second carboxylic acid group, that is in the side chain, sets in, and that is represented by the following equilibrium, which is characterized in terms of pK value, which is called as pKr, that pertains to the ionization of side chain. Now, when this happens, we find that what we get is a monoanionic species here, because we find that this species have got 2 negative charges and there is only 1 positive charge. And as we have been telling again and again, as we increase pH, so the equilibrium shifts from this species to this one here, and at a pH slightly greater than that of this pKr, we find that the species is primarily in this form here. With further increase, the ionization of this NH3 plus group sets in, and what you have is an equilibrium between this monoanionic species and a dianionic species here, and this is characterized by a pK alpha NH3 plus. So, we find that the ionization of aspartic acid basically takes place in 3 stages here. So, they are characterized by the 3 inflection points. So, this is the first inflection point, second inflection point and the third one here. And in such a case, the isoelectric point can be computed by the following expression, which basically is the pK of COH, that is my alpha COH, this is my first inflection point, and pKr, which pertains to the ionization of the side chain carboxylic acid. That means the isoelectric point will lie in between this and this value, and that is the average of the 2. So, that is the way we can compute the isoelectric point for an amino acid which is having an acidic side chain. Now, without getting into the titration curve, we can similarly look at the equilibria involved in case of titration of a basic amino acid. Let us look at this. Basic amino acid, I take the example of lysine. Lysine is a basic amino acid wherein what you find is that we have got a COH group there, this is my alpha NH3, and then we got another NH3 group in the side chain. So, that is a basic amino acid. Now, if I look at it, again we find that there are 1, 2, 3 inflection points, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 species, similar to what we had in case of aspartic acid, but now the equilibria involved are slightly different. Let us have a look at it. As before, at low pH we have this dicationic form of lysine here now, because in this case both of them will be protonated. So, they are dication because this is neutral here. With increase in pH, to begin with, this carboxylic acid groups gets into the ionization part, and what you get is the following species, which is a monocation. And as we increase the pH, we find more and more of this species comes into picture, and this gets consumed. That is my first inflection point of first ionization there. Further increase in pH will lead to the ionization of this amino group there, NH3 plus of the alpha part of it. With this, the equilibrium can be shown as follows, and what we find is that this NH3 plus gets converted into NH2 here, and then this stays as such. This is my second ionization, and with increase in pH, more and more of this is formed. With further increase in pH, we find that this also gets ionized, and what you get is the following species here. So, again there are 3 stages of ionization. So, it again is behaving as a triprotic acid. But in this case, if I want to compute the isoelectric point, that will be given by the average of, because we see that our deuterion is here, the deuterion is here. So, that means this will be observed pH at which this will be the predominant species, where essentially will be the average value of this pK value, that is ionization of NH3 here, alpha NH3, and that of the side chain NH3. So, because, and that is how we show it over here, that Pi, that is the isoelectric point, to be equal to pK alpha ammonium group and pK R, R happens to be the side chain here. So, this is my pK R here. So, that is how we represent the equilibria in case of titration of a basic amino acid. So, to understand the acid base behavior, we need to look at the titration curves of different kinds of acid, and then accordingly we try to work out what is the Pi value or the isoelectric point. Okay. Now, having learnt about what is isoelectric point and how do we compute and what is the basis of that for different kind of amino acids, now let us look at one of the applications of this isoelectric point, and that application happens to be a process called as electrophoresis. Electrophoresis basically is a technique which is used to separate and identify a mixture of amino acids or proteins. Now, what is done is it basically exploits the differences in the Pi values of different amino acids to separate them. Suppose we have got 2 or 3 different amino acids having different Pi values. So, what we can do is on the basis of that Pi values at a given pH, the different species will be in different ionic forms, as we have just discussed here, and that actually is exploited to separate them. We will talk about it a little while from now. Now, typically in case of electrophoresis, we use some kind of a solid support, which could be a strip of paper or some kind of acrylamide gel, or the variety of things are available over there. And what we do is that we just take an example of paper electrophoresis, wherein we use a strip of paper and saturate that with an aqueous buffer solution of a given pH. That means, we kind of fix some kind of a pH with some rationale. We will talk about that in a while from now. And then what we do is on this sheet of paper which has been soaked into the buffer solution, we put a certain mixture of amino acids or proteins that needs to be separated. We put that near the center of the gel, and then what we do is we apply some kind of a electrical potential. And when you apply the electrical potential, what happens? Different species present at the pH of the buffer solution, they move towards different electrodes depending on their net charge, and it is that what is exploited here. And towards the end, what we do is, once the separation has been achieved, we take out the strip, dry it out and spray with some kind of a spraying agent. Typically, we use ninhydrin for the purpose, because ninhydrin is an agent which binds very specifically with the amino acids. Now, let us look at how do we actually do electrophoresis. What basically is done is, as I just mentioned, we have got some kind of a gel or a paper which is soaked into the suitable buffer there. then what we do is, and there are two electrodes, because they are the ones which are used to apply potential across this particular support here, and in the center of it we put our mixture. So, this mixture I am trying to demonstrate to you in terms of an animation is basically a mixture of 3 amino acids, which happens to be lysine, alanine and aspartic acid. I have purposely chosen them because lysine is a basic amino acid, alanine is a neutral one, and aspartic acid is an acidic one. And what I have done is, as I just mentioned a little while before, that is the isoelectric point for alanine happens to be 6.01 or so. So, what I have done, I choose a pH of 6.01 for the buffer I use here. So, when I do that, what I am basically trying to do is, at a pH of 6.01, my alanine primarily will be in the zwitterionic form, that is the way it has been defined. And at the same pH, because the nature of the two other amino acids is so different, my aspartic acid will be in a monoanionic form, and my that lysine molecule will be a cationic form. So, when I apply potential, that means I put a mixture here, then I apply potential. Let us see what happens here. What happens is that aspartic acid, which is anionic, that will move to the positive electrode. Lysine, which is cationic, which will move towards the negative electron, and alanine, which basically is zwitterionic, there is no net charge on that, it will not move at all. So, we find that by using this simple logic, we are able to separate these 3 amino acids, and the basic rationale of electrophoresis is that we just exploit this fact that at a given pH, different species have got, they are at different ionic states, because we have seen a lot of equilibria in the short while before. We find that at a given pH, the species which will be predominant will depend on the nature of amino acid. So, that actually is made use of in case of electrophoresis. So, having talked enough about acid base properties of alpha amino acids, let us move on to the stereochemistry of alpha amino acids. Now, we know that that in case of alpha amino acids, there is a tetrahedral arrangement around a carbon atom, the alpha carbon atom. There are 4 different groups over there, and that makes alpha amino acid chiral. That is how it is. That is, we have got an alpha carbon here, which is chiral here, because there are 4 different groups there. This is the carboxylic acid group there, NH3, the side chain, and hydrogen atom over here. Look at this model here. This is an alpha amino acid. What you find is that this is what I am referring to. This is my chiral carbon here, because this is chiral because it is attached to 4 different groups. This is NH2, this is my COH there, this is H here, and this is my side chain which I am holding in hand. This is CH3, because this model is of alanine molecule here. So, we find that this molecule is chiral, and all amino acids are chiral with one exception, and that exception happens to be glycine. Because what happens is, in case of glycine, what do we have? We have the following, that is, this side chain is an hydrogen atom here. So, when you have got this molecule, what you see that this carbon atom is not chiral anymore, because there are 2 groups which are similar, that is, there are 2 hydrogen atoms are there. So, this is not chiral. So, glycine is not optically active. This is one exception. Besides this, all other amino acids are optically active. Let us see the Fischer-Rozanoff representation of alpha amino acid. We know that the Fischer projection or representation basically is a representation of a 3-dimensional structure in 2 dimensions. So, essentially what it means is that we project the chiral center onto a plane of the paper, and in such a representation, which I am sure that you are very familiar with, the chiral atom in this case is my carbon here, is at the point of intersection of the 2 straight lines, that is, this is my chiral carbon atom over here. Then the vertical line joins the 3 atoms of the principal chain. In case of my amino acid, the principal chain happens to be COH, C alpha and R, and where again the COH will be on top of it. This is a specific way of doing it. Then the horizontal straight line, that is this line I am referring to, basically joins the other 2 atoms to the chiral atom. So, in this case they happen to be NH3 and H here. So, that is my Fischer-Rozanoff representation. But how do we translate it back into a three-dimensional thing. Let's look at it. Basically, this is my Fisher projection, and what happens is the central atom lies in the plane of the paper, because this is very important to understand. That is, this is my carbon atom. I am just trying to open this up and see that this carbon atom is on the plane of the paper, and the other two atoms of the principal chain are behind the plane. That is, these two are behind the plane, they are shown with the wedges which are dotted wedges there, and the remaining two groups are in the front of the plane. So, these are pointing towards you. Look at the model. So, this is what I am referring to. I just said that is how it will be from your side. What you see that this is my principal chain COH, C alpha and R here, the CH3 in this case, that is my side chain. So, this is my vertical line here, and this is my horizontal line, this is NH3 or NH2 and hydrogen here. So, this is my representation, and what you see is that these two groups NH3 or NH2 whatever it is and H, they will point towards you, and the principal chain atoms here, that is principal chain groups COH and the side chain are pointing away from you, and this carbon atom is in the plane of the paper. So, that is the meaning of this representation. Whenever you see a Fisher projection, so what you have to imagine here is that the groups which are on the vertical line, they are going away from you, and the ones on the horizontal line are coming towards you. Okay. So, that is about the Fisher projection of alpha amino acids. Let us now talk something about the absolute configuration of alpha amino acids. Absolute configuration basically is designated by a small sized capital letter, that is D or L. Essentially, the absolute configuration refers to the three-dimensional arrangement of the chiral carbon atom over here. And in case of alpha amino acids, basically it indicates a formal relationship of the given amino acid with D or L serine, which again is an amino acid, because that has been chosen as a standard reference here. And this serine in turn is related to D and L glyceraldehyde respectively. Let us look at these pictures here. That is what I mean here. This is my D serine. D serine is having the following configuration. That means, this is my chiral carbon atom here, and the other groups are in the following way. I am sure that we understand the meaning of these. This D serine is related to D glyceraldehyde. So, wherever there is an OH here, so there is an equivalence of NH3 plus here. CHO equivalence is COO minus, CH2OH is same in both the cases. Similarly, we have got L glyceraldehyde and L serine. L serine is related to L glyceraldehyde, and the only difference between the two is just that NH3 comes onto the left hand side as against the right hand side of this. So, that is how the D and L, the absolute configuration, differ from each other. All naturally occurring alpha amino acids, they are found to be L amino acids. That means, they will relate to L serine. That means, if I just try to draw the structures, or if you look at the three-dimensional arrangement around this carbon atom, that will be of this kind. That is exactly what I was trying to show to you. Now, let us just talk about one more aspect of the stereochemical understanding of alpha amino acids, that is about the RS nomenclature, which again is a nomenclature which basically talks about how do we assign the configuration of the chiral carbon here. Now, we all know that, as I just mentioned, that all alpha amino acids with the exception of glycine happen to be optically active. Since they are optically active, that means they will exist in two enantiomeric forms. That means, this is my alanine here, this is, and they will have mirror images which are non-superimposable. Now, as regards assigning R or S notation to chiral carbon atom, you will recall that what we basically do is we look at the chiral carbon, and the groups attached to the symmetric carbon are arranged in the order of priority according to CIP rules. I am not getting into rules here, I presume that they are known to you. Thereafter, what we do is we keep the fourth priority group away from us, and then look at the molecule along the bond from the asymmetric carbon to the fourth priority group, and see follow the groups 1, 2 and 3 and see the sense of rotation. What we do is, say suppose this is the arrangement here, this is my priority number 4, this is 1, 2 and 3. So, when I follow 1, 2, 3, we find that this is moving in clockwise direction. When that happens, we say it is an R enantiomer. And if it so happens that the priority moves like this is 1, 2, 3. If it is moving anti-clockwise, I say it is a S enantiomer. Let us look at the model of alanine and see what is the configuration of the chiral carbon atom in this case. Now, if I look at this molecule here, what we have to do is first we have to assign the priorities here. As per the CIP rules, the priority number 1 will go to this nitrogen here. So, NH2 draws my first priority, this is priority number 1. Second priority will go to COH group, third will go to my side chain here, and fourth will come to this hydrogen atom there. So, that is the order of priorities there 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, to assign a configuration to this carbon atom, what we have to do is we have to hold the molecule in such a fashion that this priority number 4, I am holding the priority number 4 in my hand here. So, this is from your side, it is pointing away from you. When it is pointing away from you, then what you have to see is that in what way does the other priorities move. This is my priority number 1, 2, 3. So, it is moving anti-clockwise. Since it is moving anti-clockwise, this is basically my S configuration. That means, my alanine happens to be of S configuration. Now, let us see here. So, this is pictorially I am showing the same thing, that in case of alanine, my priorities move because I am keeping 4 away from myself, and then looking at 1, 2, 3, it is moving clockwise. So, L-alanine and most of the other amino acids will have S notation, but there are 2 exceptions here. The exceptions happen to be cysteine and cysteine. In case of cysteine, what happens is my side chain has got a sulfur atom here, this is CH2SH. So, when that happens, this SH now, this group takes a precedence over my carboxylic acid here. So, the order of priorities will change. So, NH2 as before will have priority number 1, but my CH2SH will become priority number 2, and COO will be priority number 3, and H as before will be priority number 4. So, when I look at from this side, from a side away from my priority number 4, I find that it is moving clockwise from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 1. This is clockwise. So, L-cysteine and cysteine containing sulfur in the side chain, they have R notation. So, this is only exception. All other amino acids will have S configuration at the chiral carbon atom. Okay. Now, let us sum up what we have done today. What we have done today is that we started talking about the acid base properties, wherein we talked about the nature of amino acid to be zwitterionic, and then we saw the consequences of the presence of 2 different functionalities in the same molecule, and both happens to be the one which have got acid base nature in them. Then thereafter, we saw a consequence of acid base nature of amino acids in a practical application called as electrophoresis. Then thereafter, we looked into the stereochemical aspect of alpha amino acids. In this context, we talked about the Fischer-Rozanoff representation. Thereafter, we looked into the DL absolute configuration of the amino acids. And then lastly, we talked about RS nomenclature or RS notation of the chiral carbon atom. In the next session, we will take up the synthesis of alpha amino acids and the reactions which they undergo, and then thereafter we will move on to peptides. Thank you.